So, in this video, the last of my 5-part lever lock picking series, we're going to look at some more specialised techniques I didn't really cover in the previous 4 videos. And these are, in no particular order, we're going to look at overlifting, so using overlifters. We're going to be looking at pre-lifting, using pre-lifters, and even briefly tryout keys. So here are 2 overlifters, and these were made for me by Andy Mac Locksmith Tools. If you compare it to, say, a standard lever pick, you can see that there is automatically a difference, and you can probably guess why that difference is. Very similar in terms of construction and finish and materials. This is 1.6mm wire. You can make this yourself out of 1.6mm music wire like this, or buy them from a locksmith tool shop. And yeah, as you can probably figure out, the reason why these overlifters are shaped like this is because they can lift more than one lever at a time and to a great height. Now I actually have here a left hand and a right hand overlifter, and that is because you may have a lock you need to open from a different side, or indeed the levers pivot from a different side, and this allows you to either lift counterclockwise or clockwise depending on that lock. So what do overlifters actually do? Well, as we discussed earlier, they act on more than one lever at a time. And to overlift would imply that you would push the levers up to a greater height than the gate, and then that would overlift them. So on a lock like this, where you have pockets either side of the gating and you have the lever bars, what we can do is we can insert a overlifting wire. And I'm just going to grab one which is a counterclockwise lifter. And what we can do is we can push up all the levers at once and then let go of them. So if you were trying to give this an equivalency to a pin tumbler, you could say it's a bit like a bump key and a bit like a rake. What we're doing is we're pushing the levers up past the gating, and we're going to put them under tension as we drop those levers back down. So what we'll try to do is we'll insert a tensioner or tension wire into the bottom of the lock. We will grab the talon and we'll insert an overlifter, and really it doesn't necessarily matter whether you use a right-handed or a left-handed one, as long as it's able to lift the levers up. So here is an example of me using a different handedness. There you go. And as long as you can act on it, it doesn't really matter. It depends what's more comfortable. But indeed, you do have a range of them, which I would suggest you either make or buy, of different heights and different widths of the tips for different locks, and of course they're different handedness. So you can see here there's a whole bunch of these that I have, and this will allow me to overlift lots and lots of different types of locks, pivoted left and right from each side of that lock. And like a lot of tools, you just need to have a range to give you the best chances of getting into the most locks. So what I'm going to do now is demonstrate the technique of overlifting, where we overlift the levers in a non-curtained and a curtain lever lock, and then sort of let go of the levers as we apply tension to the bolt, and hopefully as the levers drop down we can catch the bolt stump in the gating and get an open. It doesn't work on every single lock, and the more extreme the bitting, the less likely you are to get an open. But with the right wire, the right technique, and a bit of patience, you'd be surprised how many of these mortice lever locks, whether they've got 3 or 5 levers, you can open using this technique. So let's have a look at some demonstrations. So this is a non-curtained mortice lever, 5 levers, no false gates or notches. Make sure I've got tension. Rest it on the lever bars. Then put my overlifter tool in. Support with the thumb and lift that lever pack. Now, as they drop back down, put a little tension on the tension tool and see if we can't get an open. There we go. And backwards, just reverse the tension on the tool. There we go. Here we have a curtained lever lock, and you can see that this one has lots of false notches as well. So we're just going to put the cover back on. There we go. Then put the overlifting tool in. And turn it. So turn this back and forth so that you can hear the lever spring, and then lift all the way to the top and pulse the tension as you let go. And there we go. We have an open. So in front of us we have a set of tryout keys. And these are 3 lever tryout keys designed for little 3 lever locks like this. There you go, 3 lever. And as you'd expect, what they try to do is they try to give you a range of keys for which you might be able to replicate the bitting of the actual key itself, and by trial and error going through these tryout keys one at a time, get an open. Now this is a 3 lever tryout set. I don't own a 5 lever tryout set, but this is a 5 lever lock, and indeed, yes, you can get a 5 lever tryout set, but because there's more levers, therefore more combinations of cuts, you can imagine that there are many more keys, and in fact, yes, there are, I think, somewhere around 70. Do they work in curtained locks? Well, I have seen it work, but I wouldn't recommend it. I think these are more designed for the non-curtained lever locks out there. And you'd be surprised how they work on those locks. They are not designed to be exact keys, so the techniques you use are not just to insert it into a keyway one at a time and just turn it like a key and expect it to open. You can see that they rotate in the keyway like this, so you need to support it with your thumb. And because of the depths of the cuts on these tryout keys, they can be used at different depths in the keyway. So you might want to actually put it in and rotate it relatively low in the lock and just get a small amount of lift on the levers, and then, or you can increase the amount of key you're putting into the lock, so you can lift the levers a little bit down here, or you can lift it higher in the keyway and then lift the levers even higher. Or you can do a technique which is whereby you essentially try to push and bump the levers all at the same time. So you put the key in and then you just push straight up, so you try to act on the levers all at the same time. So what I'm going to do is demonstrate 2 different locks. I'll show you the keys, I'll show you which of these tryout keys I found worked best, and you will see that they are not exact copies of either key, and in some ways it's partially the technique as well as the close match to the key. So ideally, yes, you'd find one of these which almost identically copies the key of the lock which you're trying to open, but the chances are what you'll need instead is an approximation and a little bit of technique and experience. Anyway, let's go and demonstrate this. So here you go, this is a little 3-lever lock, and here is a tryout key which I have opened this with, and you'll see that it's not actually a direct replica, but it is sort of close enough for this lock. So let's give it a go. Again, I'm going to support it with my thumb as I turn, and might need to try a couple of times. And we have it open. There we go. The tryout key that works for this is this. And you can see the bolt step is in the center, just like on this key here. If I overlay them, you'll see that they're not really that close, but they are close enough that they will just about work. And the technique I'm going to use for this is to, a few things really, is to partially turn it like a key, to flip the levers up, partially push up and partially wiggle. It's not particularly easy, but it does work if you're lucky. So invert it the other way up this time and use the thumb to push those levers up like this. And there we go. Closed. Or open indeed. Okay, so yeah, it doesn't always matter if it is identical as long as it's close enough and you have got your technique down. So let's talk about pre-lifters. What is a pre-lifter? Well, here is a pre-lifter. Looks just like a key that's been cut down a bit weird. And here's the original key, and you can see. And yep, it is actually a key which has been cut down a bit weird. But why on earth would we need that? Well, it's all because some locks have levers which the belly rests on the curtain. You can see here, in fact, that you have lever 4 resting on the curtain. Why does that pose as a problem? Well, when you're operating the lock as normal, it doesn't pose any problem at all. There you go. The key works perfectly fine because the key is tensioning the curtain to act on the bolt and lifting the levers all at the same time in harmony, just as intended. You can actually see that there is a lever step on this key which is incredibly low, and that's because this is the lowest cut these era locks go to, and that cut there is so low it only just lifts lever 4 to the correct height to allow the lock to open. You can see there's a lever there which barely gets lifted at all. Yeah, that's lever 4, barely gets lifted at all. So we can take advantage of that and create a tool which pre-lifts that lever for us. But again, why? Why would we need to do that? Well, let me just put in a small cut down key which tensions the curtain only. Put in a lever wire and tension the lock. Right, now I can pick onto lever 1 and 2 and 3 relatively easily. But what I can't do is I can't get past this lever 4 to get lever 5 or indeed lever 4 because, yep, it's resting on the curtain. The belly of that lever is resting on the curtain. Now I can sort of corkscrew round a little bit, which is essentially moving the wire in to try to pick under it and then slide through. But that's complicated, especially if you don't know the bitting of the lock to begin with. So locksmiths might have a tool, just like the curtain tensioning tools here, which have a piece of metal on one side which will pre-lift levers which are resting on the curtain to their lowest cut. And that will actually already lift them to the correct position so that the gate is open for the bolt stump. Here is a cheaper version, which is that cut down key and you see that not only does it have material to tension the curtain, but it has material on there to lift any levers that are resting on the curtain to their first position. Here is a normal tensioning key. Here is a pre-lifting key. Both are cut down to allow access for a wire. But if you look, this one is cut at an angle. There you go. Can you see how I've had to, and I made this myself, cut it at a small angle, about 15 degrees. Just so I have enough material from the tip of the key to pre-lift those levers. If you look at the original key here, you'll see that, and line them up, it's quite hard to do. You'll see that that pre-lifter tip is exactly the height of that first cut. So when I insert this, it lifts that lever to exactly the right height. And that means that when I pick through using this special pre-lifter, there we go, you'll see that trying to get it past the spring, there we go, you'll see that I can get through all the way to the back really easily because there isn't a lever 4 with its belly resting on the curtain. So I don't even need to worry about lever 4. This essentially turns it into a 4 lever lock instead of a 5 lever lock. The only downside to pre-lifters is that this will not work in many locks. It'll work in Era Fortresses. It may work in a few others with similar keys that just happen to have a key cut which lifts the levers to that first position. Otherwise, you're going to have to make one of these for every single type of lock, which is why locksmiths, when they have one of these tensioners with a pre-lifter tip, will have some for the most common locks that they encounter, but it will get very, very expensive very quickly if you end up having to get a special tension tool tip for every single type of lock out there. So there you go, that's a run through some of the more specialised lever picking techniques out there, of which they work on different types of lever lock. We have obviously our overlifters, which are, well, a bit like, as I said, a cross between a rake and a bump key, if you were considering a comparison between lever locks and pin tumblers. Then you have the tryout keys, which in theory you'd expect them to work just like a bunch of keys. You just go through until you find one that works, but in reality they are more like a set of city rakes in a way, and they're like jiggler keys but for lever locks. However, the closer the cuts on the key match the actual key, the better. And then you have the pre-lifters, which are just specialised tension tips which pre-lift levers to the lowest key cut and therefore the true gate in a certain lock. So that essentially then minimises the number of levers you have to pick, and also means that you don't have levers with their bellies resting on the curtain getting in your way and stopping you picking levers behind it. Hope you found that interesting. That does end my 5-part series. I really hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed making the videos. They might not be perfect, they might not cover every single technique out there, but I really hope it gives beginners a really in-depth insight into lever lock picking. If you've never picked a lever lock before, please, please, please go out there, grab some, either buy or make some tools, and just give it a go. It's just as much fun as pin tumblers. It's a great skill to have. Okay, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.